On this project, my viewport started chugging pretty quick. I'm not used to working on a laptop, so I did not work smart. But I got it back to smooth playback, and it took every trick I know. This is a series about optimization. I've already done file size and opening speed. The next one is render time optimization. First of all, make your viewport as simple as you can. Turn off the viewport compositor. Turn off effects like bloom and AO in the EV render tab. Change volume settings and how curves are displayed. If you can, go full gray. If you use a rendered view, consider turning down the viewport pixel size. With that and a good GPU, I find that a Cycles viewport can sometimes be even more responsive than an EV one. I actually learned something new on this project. When I opened the file, the viewport would be nice to move in. I'd open a shaded view, which was a bit too much, and when I went back to solid view, it was still laggy. I believe the shaders stay compiled in memory. If anyone knows how to unload it, please tell me, and I'll pin the comment to the top. In the Simplify tab, you can turn down the max allowed texture size, child particles, and subdivisions. This will help a ton. Hide objects you don't need to see. For me, that was hair, eyes, feet, basically every detail on the character. Also, turn off modifiers that you don't need in the viewport. Turn off the add-ons you don't need. If you have a lot of them, there are dedicated add-ons to manage your add-ons, to turn them on and off as you need. Unload the asset browser. Apply modifiers from top to bottom. Well, not all modifiers, but most of them. I explained that in the previous video in the series about open times. Consolidate your materials. It's common to end up with materials that look quite similar. For instance, my scene had 3 versions of gold. One for stair nosing, one for the rim of the carpet, and one for the fence. In the outliner, there's a view called Blender File. Here I opened the Materials tab, selected every gold material that I didn't need, right-clicked and pressed Remap Users. Here I chose the one gold material I wanted to use. Now that material propagates to every place that previously had another gold. Afterwards, I delete every unused material by going to File, Cleanup, Recursive Unused Data Blocks. It's nice to have a shaded viewport, but you don't always need quite as complex materials as your final render. If you render with cycles, you can make 2 material outputs. One for cycles and one for EV. Whatever you put into the EV output will show in the viewport, and that can be a simplified version of the material without so many nodes. If you want to know which materials are bogging down your viewport the most, the ToOptimize add-on analyzes all of your materials and sorts the list by impact. This is really a time saver for big scenes. At this point, my viewport is completely smooth, but I'll keep going and show you some more tricks. I sorted everything into collections. That way I could hide everything I wasn't working on and make the viewport more responsive. No need to see the characters when I'm working on the environment. This will also become really useful when optimizing the render, but we'll get to that in the next video. You can choose a viewport display type for each object. Things that don't need textures you can show as solid, if you don't need the surface, show it as a wireframe, and if you don't even need the shape, show it as bounds. To change it for multiple objects at once, hold down Alt when clicking the dropdown. And that is a kind of proxy object. A proxy is a way to display the model in the viewport, which improves performance, and it's separate from how it looks in the render, and you can make them yourself. In geometry nodes, degrade the model with a merge or convex hull, then switch between the two using a viewport node. It is now low poly in the viewport and high poly in the render. Adjust your viewport clipping. For very large scenes, like landscapes, it can pay to cut off some of the things far away. High poly objects will kill your viewport, and I had a couple in my scene. I used ToOptimize tools, which color codes every object and collection by polycount. In my case, one object lights up red. The statistics show that this one object contains around 1/3 of all polygons in my scene. I add a decimate modifier and pull it down to 0.02. If I needed to show the high poly in the final render, I can turn this modifier off in render and keep it on in the viewport, but the object won't be very visible, so I'll just apply it with Ctrl A. That fixed, I select everything else and analyze again. Now it sees more variation. This is the order that I usually optimize a mesh in. First, merge by distance to connect ripped vertices, and then delete loose to delete floating points and edges, then degenerative dissolve to fix some broken parts, decimate to reduce polygons by percentage. You can often go as low as around 0.1 without any visual degradation. And then limited dissolve to convert what's already flat faces into one big face. And at the end, to fix shading issues, I often add a weighted normals modifier. The lower poly count will also speed up the render, and that is what the next video is all about.